Call the meeting to order and we'll begin to for the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Starting with our consent agenda, minutes from the previous meeting. Yes. The words, I had a question, first line item, the title one piece. I was just wondering, was it purchase request?
So originally, the testing coordinator, Amy, had a Chromebook that what we realized is that masked and it was pretty up to date. It was a newer Chromebook. However, masking is what requires that our reports be done in Microsoft Word, which we can't put on that Chromebook. So we ended up purchasing her one later so that she could run those. What she was doing for us before is coming into either my office or going to Judy, or when one of us was gone, she'd go in and use our computers so that she could use Microsoft. I was wondering about, on that same note, maybe some things to spend that money on. For the job camera and the inner health curriculum and the CPR classes, was there not a way that we could have figured out how to have surplus?
We didn't even know these were expensive for coming. Esther ended September 30th. This grant ends December 31st.
The document camera was a replacement, so that was, and we actually had an extra one, we used both of those. So the document camera is an additional one. Did you remember the other two things you were mentioning? The CPR and the kinder health curriculum. I think it's kinder health curriculum, it's K on the thing.
These are things that were purchased after September 30th, that just supplies that have come in. Paid curriculum could be teachers pay teachers, or it could be online subscriptions, things that have been anything in the last 2 months. So
The only question I had was on the radio board troubleshoot. Was that literally the bill just for troubleshooting?
So that was to get it connected. Well, at first we weren't sure if that had cellular, and then, Oxy came out to see that it did, and they had to put it on our network. And that's partially for security purposes, so we don't want everyone on our network. So, yeah, it took us quite a while to get all that figured out. It runs very easily now, but the process of setting it up was interesting.
That's all the question I have.
Also the first aid class you mentioned, or CPR, so we did that last year for the majority of our teachers. And then I went ahead and scheduled another one for this year, so that any teachers who missed last year this year.
We had no transportation contracts, JV approvals, or, it was going to the state side roads. So any other questions on the consent agenda? If I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda? I will make a motion to approve that consent.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to guest comments. Vice Chair, could I do the other case
Public are encouraged to comment during this time regarding items not listed on the agenda. The chair will seek public comments on agenda items as they occur. By law, the board cannot take action on matters discussed during the public comment portion of the meeting, but may include a matter arise during the time on a future agenda. The board would like to remind everyone to avoid commenting on private personal matters, private student matters, and pending legal matters.
Do we have any guests now?
I know our boys basketball and cheer season is coming to an end. The 7-8 team, they had their tournament last week at the beginning of the week. And then we have the 5-6 that will be starting their tournament this tomorrow. And so that's exciting. The boys have been really working hard. Josh is a great coach working with them. And then our cheerleaders, some of them are participating in an event with the high school on the 21st, I believe. So some of the girls are going over to the high school and they're learning the dance/cheer. So we're trying to really build those connections with the high school to get the kids that are moving forward that opportunity. And so I'm excited to see how that turns out.
Matt, you want to say something? Well, Amy Iverson is completing her degree. She will complete it, hopefully, she will teach it and June. I think Ms. Sharon wanted to make sure we got a contract, so that no one will super up on this.
I just want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row because come February, we only got one meeting from now until January. This February, by the time she has her certificate, we can issue a contract. Amy's position is the certified position, part of it is basically replacing Nadine when she retired. And we've been kind of doing great, Amy's doing great, but we really should have a certified teacher in that position. And that was the intent all along, was when Amy got her degree, was to issue her a contract and understand that we're not bringing in out of a general fund, we're bringing in out of the title fund. That's where Nadine was budgeted, part of all of Amy's budgeted as well. So we're not incur any more costs. Sorry, budget.
I have a little, but some people for the title program, they're maybe like, kind of, what does that entail? What does it do? Mrs. Ordway and I, we revamped it in 2020 to make it kind of its own department and kind of separated from the special education department. Then when she retired in 2022, I was told, if you go get your teaching degree, you can step into that position. So I stepped into that position. I've been running the program since 2022. Our biggest focus is pulling small groups for students to make sure they close their gaps within reading and math. This year, we have a total of 72 students utilizing title interventions. I'm in charge of setting up and scheduling our small groups for the reading curriculum, which we use 6 in reading. And then we also have the math curriculum, which is Bridges. So it's been a great curriculum that you guys, I really appreciate you guys allowing the purchase of that. So my position, I really try to focus more on the reading. And then I have a para that does a lot of focus on the math part for me. This year we're kind of both doing a little, just the way the schedules are, she's kind of more part-time in that. Currently we have 26 students in our SITS reading curriculum. And that SITS builds on the foundation, it's building a first on foundation in reading. We see a lot of good growth in that. We have 41 students in our Read Live program, which is an online program that focuses on our fluency and comprehension. And we currently have 26 students in our math curriculum in the Bridges. And so that's kind of we're really kicking it off this year. I think we can really utilize that and keep growing as the year progresses this year and furthermore. So as a title teacher, my main goal for this program is to make sure to pull students into groups, into a small group setting in different areas, and we can kind of meet the student where they're at and then get them back in the classroom. And then on top of that, I also am the testing coordinator, so I'm responsible for the state and district testing. For state testing, we do MAST, and I'm responsible for making sure our testing plans are in compliance with OPI and make sure we're following what OPI is requiring us to do. And that everything is properly updated. I also do the district testing, which is our benchmarking, and then we progress monitor. That's how we utilize and decide who we're gonna pull for title, who has graduated out of town to get back in their classroom. I also meet with the classroom teachers and we've discussed test scores and what we can do to improve our students' work and their outcomes. And my final term is ending January 30th. If I don't have a sick day, I can graduate January 30th and then I'll be a certified teacher. So I'm super excited. It went a long, long road. So sorry for the long spiel.
Are we allowed to comment? No. What has happened since Amy has taken over title has been incredible. We went from aides coming into our classroom with no idea what they were supposed to do that day and saying, oh, what should I do today? To an actual structured curriculum with testing and milestones and kids that were, you can just see it. And it's been amazing. And so has Amy. So,
I would say too, and that number is 72. It already sounds like a large number because it is, for one, scheduling all that. I'm just like, how do I help you? But then also we have quite a few, I don't know, Amy might know off the top of her head, the overlap of out of those 72 kids, some of them are getting SIPs, read live, and math intervention. So, I mean, we're not looking at that's even 72 different, like some of them are getting a lot of the intervention. English class like certified already, and then you like approve the contract contingent upon completion of it. So,
Well, that probably be the intent to issue a contract when license is obtained.
I could get a motion to issue Amy Iverson a teacher's contract once she's done all her she's doing.
That motion? I will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving. Well done. Thank you. Policies, these are our second reading, so after the second reading, if we have no objections, we will get up. Is about other district students, and I believe all we did was add one sentence to make it align with our strategic action. And then I'm going to page 2. Page 2. We added line 31. At the end of line 31, this priority may include applications from that as well as added to change. And policy 4330. Line 13, we did make sure to add school-related organizations including current academic year and school athletic teams, shall be granted use in the facilities relevant. Or 330 E as in Paul. We made quite a few changes on that one. And then on line 15, we just made sure to reiterate that students can school-related organizations, including work, academic year, school athletic teams, should be granted the use of the facility. I believe all the other changes were from your previous packet. No, I'm sorry, in line 13, we did say facility use will be charged to refundable deposit. 7330 F as in Frank. We did at the top delete, where we're asking if the organization would be charging an admission fee because we can, when it comes to a reason as library. Their insurance. We put that the user of the facility may be asked to provide the district with insurance. And on page 2, we just added where it says assumption of risk. That section was there, all of it was as with the original assumption. Any questions on those seats?
I can't remember, but did we determine if our insurance covered? Was that one of the things we were looking into?
So we're gonna get basically it's a waiver, that if you sign this, you, release the kind of school law liability.
Okay,
So we're trying to make it more community friendly.
yeah,
So,
so we're charging $50 and then giving them their $50 back, or we're charging $50 and a $50 deposit, and they get the $50 deposit?
if it's their personal use, then they pay $50 and that doesn't get refunded, then they also get a refundable $50 deposit.
So they pay 100.
Yeah, usually what we do is we'll have people write 2 checks and then we'll give the second check back.
Do we need to be concerned all about um 4330 P? Fees may be waived for private nonprofit groups that do not charge admission fees. Is that just like if we decide to? How is that? 18, oh, sorry, 18. Just wondering, like, do we have a way that we determine? Or is it just case by case basis?
Policies are not a way that we've done it.
So which one?
18 on 4330 P, Sun Hall. Like, do we offer that to all nonprofit groups, or is it a case by case?
Well, it'd be all in the public. Then you can pick and choose.
That's what I was worried about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you open it for one, you open it for all. So.
Second reading of policy 3141, 4330, 4330 P, and 4330 F.
I'll make a motion to approve those policies.
I will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to policy 1700. 1700 was presented at the last board meeting and then it was picked back, the discussion point. So policy 1700 is our uniform complaint procedure, which will now forever make you laugh. It is literally it was like, so if you have a problem with our dress code. The question at hand was level 3, whether or not that should be the county superintendent. So I had a discussion with the county superintendent.
He is very much willing to be on level 3, however, the problem becomes, GSD actually emailed me. But it's not at all, so it's kind of a whirlwind. They said the biggest concern is that the county superintendent is actually for an individual appeals to if they don't like a decision made. So I did verify that, if you go through the school steps, the board is your last step within the school, and if you jump on, you can go to the county super. So the issue would become if we had the county superintendent involved in our in-school items, then who do you appeal to? You technically go to the county super's office, but they would have at that point get whoever they for. And then they could always charge it off. So I still hold that we need to keep it where the board is at level 3 in the county. And that kind of comes with the document.
Absolutely. I'll second.
Agendas for second reading.
Moving on to our next list. So policy 3225, the only change was on line 16. We changed it to current administrator instead of listing out the end of each team.
And we have a number of policies that could still contain, that still need to be changed that way, right?
Yes, I think this is a,
Is that it?
So was there changes we put current administrator in 2 sections? And we went to listen. 5012, same thing, we just on line 16, put current administrator.
Yes, just as a, I think a fair, on the first page of 3225. At the top it says page 1 of 3, the bottom of it says page 2.
They like to do it to us when we start looking.
Oh, It's supposed to be at the very top of the next page. It's just like a line error.
yeah, where it said current administrator, it had a couple more lines. So when we deleted those lines, it moved everything.
Oh, okay, yeah, so those should be in line 1 and 2 of that page.
It's already been wrong.
I'll make a motion to accept those changes.
We're actually just. Discussion, coaching, application process, and I will turn it over to our AD.
So thank you guys for letting me come speak to you guys and answer and clarify any questions that you guys may have regarding how we've been selecting coaches. So before I was hired here at Kaiser School, I believe that the PE teacher at the time coached the volleyball team and the basketball team. And then it just so happened that as he left and I was coming in, and one of, I had mentioned in my interview process that I had experience coaching. And so then I was lucky enough to be offered a 3rd grade teaching position back in 2017. And then I was also offered the volleyball coaching position at the time. And then as the seasons went on and they were looking through, we did have a 7-8 boys basketball coach and girls basketball coach at the time. So then I was also, because I mentioned I did have some experience with coaching basketball. And so then I was offered that position as well. And so, throughout the season, you know, the end of every season, I'd always check in with whoever my current admin was and just say, hey, anything that I need to work on, everything going smoothly. And I was always given, you know, hey, you're doing a great job. And so it has been pretty much practice to keep coaches in their position as long as they are developing like the kids versus just focusing on that scoreboard and be like, yeah, gotta win and drag them to the ground. And so I am always trying to be consistent with outside, you know, entities. So I did reach out to Flathead High School. I know they have a new athletic director this year, and he also had the same, because I asked him, you know, what's your policy? How do you handle all those? And so he said the same thing, like if a coach is, maybe they didn't have a stellar year, but they're still doing what's right for kids. It's not like we're gonna just be like, okay, you're one and done kind of a thing. And then also I know at the high school level, it's a little different because they are technically supposed to like evaluate their coaches and then, you know, they are also on a year-to-year contract. So that's in, you know, I try to be in line with that. And then it has been a practice of offering coaching positions to certified staff before outside community members. I know last year during our negotiation, that was an issue of trying to not miss the mark for like internal positions and missing outside, opportunities. So, sorry, read my notes here. So since coaches were already in place, I didn't post anything and let, you know, until it came up as it got a little bit closer to the season. And so, you know, through the years, we don't really have a lot of people knocking on our door. And since I have been coaching volleyball and the basketball for the last couple of years, I've always welcomed like people to help out, or like nobody ever really like handed me an application or saying, hey, I really want to take over for you or whatever. So I just hadn't really been been told otherwise, you know. So that's kind of how that's been going. So does it kind of look like we maybe not focus on experience, but you know, when you do post things and it goes and it goes and it goes and it goes, and you're now, you know, basketball season starting and we don't have a coach, so then I don't have the heart to not give those kids an opportunity, because I might not be the best coach, but I can get somebody to come in and help me out. I watch videos, you know, so it's all in the getting these kids experience. So, so that can be a little tricky at times. I know there was concern or talk at a previous board meeting about, coaches per sport. I also, spoke to the athletic director at the high school because it looks like they have a bunch of coaches, but which they kind of do, but they kind of, I think, just sit on to kind of be a second hand, but I don't think they're necessarily paid as like an assistant coach. And, you know, really truly, the only reason why I think like it's came up as needing to have two coaches is if me having that athletic director and being a coach, you know, so that's where it was starting to get tricky, because when I first hired in, I wasn't deemed the athletic director. It kind of just, you know, you're doing this, or hey, would you like to do this kind of a thing. And so I do see that it does get tricky, and so, you know, I really still truly just stand by, you know, the only sport I really feel truly in the bottom of my heart really needs to have two people is cross country. Just because it's in that big, you know, we're in open spaces, and the AG said it well, where it's like some sports just need more. And, so I think it's just in our best interest, to keep the cross-country as two. And it's no, like, it's no takeaway from the coach or coaches that we have had in the past. I just think it, like, I just don't want us to be put in a bad spot and then kind of have to pay for it later. And so, and I did sit down with, myself, and I did share with Amanda, because we're on the budget committee. And so I did write down like how many hours our coaches coach, mileage, how far they have to travel, like, you know, going to these different, as we reach out to these other venues of, you know, working at the high school or taking them to a fun high school game to see, or these extras. So I did break it down to hopefully bring it to the budget to say, is there anything we can do to maybe increase these stipends to help out our coaches that we currently have, or if not, future coaches. Because it, you know, they do put their heart and soul into it, and so we want to honor that as well. So that's, you know, kind of the rundown that I have for you guys. I know so moving forward per our updated CBA, like if a coaching position does come available, then I would definitely post it for internal and external at the same time, just so that we don't also miss out on that opportunity. So. And, I don't know.
Any questions? I think really, I mean, I think it gets tough when you're coaching both teams. One person coaching both teams, for tournament wise, or what does the team do? Like last week, when 7th and 8th, and that coach is at the tournament, what happens with the 6th, who's coaching them then? When they're going into tournaments this week, I think that was one concern that we had.
So we've worked out where if we need to do a morning practice, we definitely could. So this year was kind of weird because normally we have, you know, the 5-6 first and then the 7-8, but this year they flipped it on us. And then we were supposed to have it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like we normally do. However, last weekend was a big training for MOA refs, and we wouldn't have had access to referees. So the schools that had to coordinate that tournament, they were like, well, we're gonna have to move it to the beginning. So, you know, because we've got to get refs ready for that high school season. Because as you know, it's not easy to get referees. So, that's why it was a little different. And, you know, we're all taking notes to maybe, you know, to offer feedback of like, did we like that? So that's what we have figured out this year is if we couldn't do an after school practice, could we do a shorter morning practice? And then because of the 7-8 tournament being at the beginning of the week, we were able to kind of give the boys, the 5-6 boys, like a day off, because then we had like 8 practices before their tournament. So, and we have reached out to parents to, you know, I've had to reach out to parents and say, hey, I have this, would you be willing to run like an open gym session? So it's not like they're being totally denied a practice. I know Amy has helped out this year with the 7-8 with Kaylee as well to still continue the fundamentals and keep that going. So hopefully we're not really shortchanging anybody, you know. I do my darndest to make sure, like, if boys basketball has 6 practices before our first game, then I try and make sure the girls basketball, you know, I try and keep it as consistent and fair as possible. So.
That, and then I think the only other thing we talked about was that it's tough with cross country being one of the lower stipend sports to ask the coach to split that. I mean, I can see both ways that were argued where it's the same thing. If you're the only coach for 5, 6, 7, 8, you have 2 teams in a gym. If something was to happen to you or you had to go with a student, you're leaving 20 students by themselves. They are in a gym, but they're still in a foreign place that there's no other. I mean, I think it could be argued both ways. I do get it's open I don't know what the right solution is there. It's tough to ask somebody to split the stipend, lowest stipend, and dedicate those hours for next to nothing when one person gets to take two stipends, and I don't know what the right solution is there. Stuff.
Cross country things. Interesting, my personal opinion too, though.
Yeah.
Mary was good enough to try to really put in the big, some of the amount of time you spend doing this work, traveling with us, and so just, and realizing that at least is one sport where we need to have two, so to really take it to the weather committee and go like, it's not that it's gonna be split, it's that it's gonna be two people, we hope, right? So
Right.
stipends. So that's probably just a budgeting and then hopefully it's.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
I do strongly feel though that, with the person that's in charge of the athletic department, if at all possible, that we don't have a coach.
Sure.
It is extremely, I think it's really challenging, with just everything that's going on, and I know that there's that love for wanting to coach. But when you're in charge of all the coaches and in charge of all of the scheduling, I really feel like it is, it just puts a lot on our athletic director, who's also a teacher, who also has to grade papers, who also has to wash uniforms, who's also doing all of these things. That I really feel like when we set up that athletic director position, that we really strongly didn't want that person to also have to be the coach.
Sure.
But I also understand that I don't want us to not have a basketball team. So it comes down to, I don't know if we say, okay, so girls basketball or boys basketball, if, whoever, when we're, putting it out there, if nobody applies by this date and the athletic director is willing to pick it up, then the athletic director gets to do that. For whatever sport, but then I don't think that the next year we should just continue having the athletic director do it.
Absolutely.
I think that we should open it up, to put it out there for people, just to free you up, because I think you are already doing so many things.
Sure.
And that we do appreciate it. We obviously don't want our kids not to have a sport, right? But we also want to respect you and all of the responsibilities and things that you have to do too.
Yeah. No, and I know, and I've been. I've really been digging deep, and I know it's that. I'm here for the love of the kids, really, truly. I don't want them to not have opportunity, but I get it, like, I have to like start pulling back. And so that is one thing I am gonna back away from coaching, and I have slowly done that as years have progressed. And so, absolutely.
But then on the flip side, if our athletic director has the love for coaching and that's where their passion is, then we maybe let someone else be the athletic director and you be the coach.
Sure.
But also, we also put that disclaimer in there because sometimes you are the only one that is willing to be the coach. And so then we're making you do triple duty and we rely heavily on you being that coach.
And you're 15 hours a day.
So we just want to be respectful of your time and you not feel like every single year when it comes up that you have to be pressured to also be the coach, that you have options too.
Absolutely. Well, and then too, I guess it's the learning how to say no. And then also letting you guys know that it would break my heart to have to say, well, we don't have a coach, we don't have a season. So that has to also be understood on the school's app as well. You know what I mean? And not to be like a jerk about it by any means, but it's just a matter that, that could potentially happen, so.
And as hard as a small school, seeing the kids go into the high school, like we had so many Kyla kids make teams this year, which was amazing. And then, a couple of the boys, and I'm amateur girls too that didn't make a team. So it's like they get the little experience that they do being here. They don't get to play the bigger teams if they're not playing travel or whatever, but I mean, every game does count. You've been a huge part of those kids moving on and being able to go into where they're, I mean, the freshman boys tryouts had 60 boys try out this year.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So to go with not having a season for 7th, 8th grade and try and go into, I mean, it's very important to offer that. to
Well, and the
kids.
other thing, I know you guys are also working on, collaborating with schools. And so, Kelsey and I, we started to talk about, well, if I only have 2 kids, could we combine our teams and still create the team? So that's kind of in the works that we're also trying to, work out to figure out. So then we don't deny that, it's, I guess, no different than sending kids to West Valley and play football with West Valley. It would be, okay, if we don't have enough Kyla kids to field a team, regardless of the sport, if we have it, however, we need, whatever we need to do and create like a Highway 2 team, and then, so so that's something that we're also playing around in our brain as well. So again, we're not denying anyone, we're trying. Like I know this season for the girls, we don't have enough girls for a 7-8 team. And so that's what brought on the, well, maybe we can combine with Smith Valley because they offered. But then I did, before I knew that was, something to ponder, I did reach out to all the athletic directors and say, hey, here's my predicament, because the rule is you don't play down. But I was like, I've got 2 older girls, could we let them play? And hands down, all of them said, absolutely, let them play. So I mean, we've got good people in our valley that we're very fortunate to work with, and so they get it. So, but that's something just to throw, that's something I'm also trying to work at as well, so that we can keep giving those kids opportunities and not have to say, no, sorry.
Right.
So,
Even looking at the idea of maybe going to one girls team, a 6, 7, 8 team.
sure.
I mean, where you have the opportunity to play maybe 7th and 8th grade teams, bring some of the younger ones up and.
Well,
I
but it's just if you saw some of those 8th grade boys, holy moly, this last season.
I agree, but also if I was a parent of a 5th grade student and I had someone like Lola,
Mhm.
an 8th grader, I would be livid and I would let it be known that there is no way that I'm gonna let an 8th grader play down to a 5th grader at someone at that level. I mean, there's another student in 8th grade this year that I can tell you there's gonna be a problem with her playing little 5th graders. The parents on the other team, the athletic director may say it's okay.
Sure,
I bet you the parents will not.
sure.
It's always easier to
yes,
play at.
Absolutely, and that's why I was totally honest up front, like, hey, this is my deal, because I didn't want to have to tell somebody no,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's my thing, is just trying to think of other avenues for them, so that they still get that opportunity, because how much of a bummer to have to say sorry.
yeah. I think you should just maybe look at creating a team that's up more than down. Playing up more than playing down. I think it would be more well
But I
received.
don't even have enough 5th and 6th graders to play up.
There's only 2 7th graders.
If that.
But I'm saying not have a 5th and 16th.
This year?
So technically, we
That's
should
why I
have
have 2 7th.
yeah.
I know, so that's why I'm saying move them all up to 7th and 8th.
I think they get trained.
Yeah,
They get trained.
yeah.
But the parents' reaction of the kids who are in 5th grade being trampled by 8th graders, I think is going to be a lot more.
But in lieu of that, it's not like we're taking somebody like Austin size and putting them against somebody who's like Molly size. You know what I mean? It's not, I wouldn't do it if it wouldn't be, like, if it would be a disadvantage, you know what I'm saying? So like, it
Well, it
would,
will be a disadvantage. They have 4 years of basketball.
well,
The 8th graders do.
there's no eighth graders. But no eighth graders are playing. There was potentially maybe one that would play, but they aren't playing. So we have no eighth graders playing. At the time, right now, I think I only have one seventh grader.
And that's why we're talking to maybe Small Valley,
Right.
might just be an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To try to keep grade levels, playing grade levels.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is if I had a kid in 5th grade, I wouldn't allow an 8th grader to come down and play in a 5th grade game against my kid.
Sure.
it's kind of
But, yeah.
Well, and I also think too, and to be honest, I think they're gonna be moving away from calling it a 7-8 and a 5-6. It's gonna be, we have an upper level and we have a lower level.
Yeah.
So that's really truly what's also gonna be coming out.
Okay.
So just an upper level and a lower level.
She was just regarding how coaches selected for the application process. This is, I was just, able to attend this board meeting, and so I just wanted to make sure that any questions we have on it.
Are you coaching girls
No,
this year? Oh, you're not?
no,
We have it cross coach.
you do have a coach, yes. I just missed the deadline, sorry, to get it on the agenda for this. It'll be next month.
I just gave a chart to Sharon, so that won't happen next year, because Sharon's amazing, and we'll keep us all alive. I would like to skip this, but we're not allowed to, the trustee nomination forms. Anna Wilson and Conrad Roush have been serving on our board for 9 years. Is that correct? Awesome. We're both in their last term. Anyone care to duct tape Anna to the chair? I will.
So nomination intent forms are available starting today until March 27th, I believe. 2 positions, 3-year terms each. History of it, if we get 2 applicants for the 2 positions, no election. If we get 3 applicants for 2 positions, then we have an election.
What if we don't get to
So if you don't get 2 applications, the board then will reach out to the community, a registered voter, anybody interested, and appoint them for a 1-year term. And then if the next year, that'll come up for election, and it will be a 2-year term. Finish all 3.
it doesn't make them stay on. No big deal.
So. If you know anybody, I have the phone. Ready to go?
No.
So different things. Information items, the polling place versus mail.
So, in lieu of that, I would like to go ahead and continue with mail ballot elections if we have one left. It's so much easier, a little more expensive mailing everything out, but my election judges only come in maybe an hour depending on the issue. They can start counting right away, you get more return back, and it's just easier. So I would just like to continue. If we have an election.
Is that something we'll need to vote on at a future meeting, or are we just continuing, so we're good?
Next month, we'll do the resolution, call an election for, the trustee election, and if there's any, levies that the board will choose to do. If not, then any part of that election can be canceled, the levies or the trustees.
Okay, we'll get on to the principal report.
So the first thing on the principal's report is the Christmas program. That's happening next week at 6:30. If you've been in the gym, it's already looking really good. If you haven't, don't go in and just be surprised because it's really fun that way. It looks really good. Tegan's been working hard as she always does. There are now combined practices and she's in the full swing of things. So it should be exciting to see that happen. I don't like to go to practice because I like to be surprised on the day of, but, I will if she does that, so. Academic update, I sent a secondary kind of board packet. It looked like this and it's minuscule. It's not the budget one.
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah.
But I don't look. So I can't do that. If you would prefer it behind you.
Yeah, because I can't.
I'm not sure if we're gonna next year. There's a teachers there now with the smartphone at the second. How do I get into my apps?
Can you like Google? Just.
Yeah.
Go to drive.google.com.
Should I go help?
Dan, if you want right now.
I exactly sorry. No, that's silent. Oh, it's still.
Yeah.
So you gotta sing.
I can talk while I'm having. So I have two sets of information. One is Ames web data and the other is mass data. I did that on purpose because, we really.
You have two S's.
Let's see. Because we really use them for different purposes. And in fact, now to ABS.
I would.
That's so cute.
I can spell, Shane.
But I, when mass first started coming out, there was this, I think, big dream that eventually schools could drop things like Ames Web, and not spend money on purchasing those additional, testing, things. So unfortunately, we use them so differently that okay, nobody look. Well, but I don't think that, and Amy and I actually just talked about this recently, maybe the goal of mass will get there, where we don't need this additional assessment. But I don't think we're there yet. And so this is just, I know when Anna asked about some test results, I said that I would give you something that looks like the teachers, but the teachers are looking at this going, this doesn't look exactly like mine. That's because there's not a list of student names here. So I removed that and just gave it to you by grade level and test lists. So it does look a little different. So teachers are like, this isn't exactly what I'm trying because they can see every student. So I did it a couple different ways because math was changed from last year to this year. So last year, the state did a little bit more than we did. Last year when we took the assessment, we sent in all of our scope and sequence for all the curriculum we use. And then OPI said, okay, here's the test lists you're taking in cycle 1, here's what you're doing in cycle 2. So we were kind of told what we would take during each of those cycles of testing. Whereas at the end of last year, they decided, we won't decide for you anymore. You can tell us which test lists you want to take during which testing session. So we kind of got to make that decision. And teachers and I started talking about that last spring just to kind of get it in their head and get those ideas going. And then we had to confirm it with the state at the beginning of this year before we went into our first test session. So you'll see like cycle 1 last year, we had 1 math test lab, but cycle 1 this year had multiple because that's what the teachers chose as far as what they're teaching when. I would say some of the biggest backlash to this is that you're kind of getting to the epitome of teaching to the test. So it's a little hard not to teach to the test when you have all these testing sessions throughout the year. So I kind of switched this a little bit and did it by topics because that gives us a better comparison. So I just took the topic for, so like multiplication and division equations, 3rd grade. Last year we had 42% with full credit answers, and this year we have 73% with full credit answers. So we are seeing a lot of improvement. there are definitely good things happening. I know one of the concerns is seventh grade. We've had a lot of concerns just about where they are and where they're at. We are seeing improvements. You'll notice that this one we haven't taken yet, so if you see an empty one, it just means it's on another testing cycle. Yeah, different testing cycle. So you can see that, for ratios and proportional relationships last year, this is the same group of students that we now see here in seventh grade. So that's why I'd say we really, really need that additional Ames web testing, because this is kind of comparing apples to oranges, in that this 26% was last year's seventh graders, but this 58% is this year's seventh graders. So, in the SST meetings we've had this week, what I brought up is that math is not ideal for individual student improvement. But what we can do is look at these percentages and say, okay, where are our lowest percentages? What do we need to teach differently? So that's kind of how we've been using math, is more like, how do we teach this differently so that we can get these full credit scores? But you're getting a new group of students, or what can we implement, or how can you do a spiral review? And we just started these discussions because we just got this rubric back. So this week was the first time in SST meetings that we've had any discussion about math. We got the results right before Thanksgiving, which that is one thing that is pretty exciting about math, is that last year we went a long time without results. And then they told us this year we were gonna get them within a week. I didn't really focus on that a lot because I was a little worried that that was pretty zealous for the whole state to get their scores in a week. So we just said, we're not gonna hold our breath. We're gonna continue with Ames Web so that we have those individual student scores. And if it comes out great, if it doesn't, we still have data and we know where we're headed and what we're doing. And then voila, it did come out in a week. So it is pretty exciting to have results back so fast. Like this is from like everything from 24, 25, which just took a couple weeks ago. We already have all the results back. So one of the things I encourage teachers to do is also look at the percentages that are in the teens here. Because that's something we want to make sure that we're really, is there something different we need to do with Pythagorean theorem? But as you can see this year, we increased a lot on that topic. I know this is a lot of data on one thing. There's not a lot of reports coming from MAST. As far as Ames Web, you can run about 9 million different types of reports. So with MAST, you kind of have to gather the data all yourself and then make it into something. So questions about MAST? Definitely seeing improvement. What we want to see is these two, this increasing every year each year. And like I said, like, 6th grade this year didn't take concepts or I should say ratios, sorry. Ratios in cycle 1, so we don't have those results yet. That's why you see the blank there. And then reading was a little bit different, and we started this discussion too. So with each cycle in reading, students answer questions on an informational text and a literary text. So as you can see, we didn't see as much growth, and in some we dropped slightly. This actually, I looked at this yesterday, and then I think this percentage, so ignore the 92% there. So this is something we need to work on a little bit more. So one thing that we're trying to fit in, or I'm trying to fit in more of, is a strategic alignment, where we look at all of the standards for each grade, and then we also decide how we're going to teach that. Where is it taught in the curriculum? Do we need to add anything else? And one thing that I included on that document that teachers are filling out is a column for mass testing, because what I'd like to make sure is that as we look at our strategic alignment, are we exposing students to informational and literary text for each testing cycle? So yeah, maybe we've taught 3 informational texts, text in the regular classroom, but then are they prepared for also a literary text? So just making sure we're varying that enough that they're being exposed to both types of literature before each test session. Yeah, that's a great question. How many times has this come up in our SSTs? We actually, we're talking about this too, because if you look. You'll see that trace value happens to be one of our lowest in several grades. However, it's a topic that we hit, I mean, kindergarten hits it, second grade hits it. So I'm like, what's going wrong that this topic is one of the biggest challenges? Do you have questions about how are they asking these questions that our kids are getting it where they've seen it since kindergarten? Like, granted, it's looking different each time. Like, dinner's not decimals in kindergarten, and Carrie's not approaching fractions quite yet, or place value of fractions, but they're still seeing that from kindergarten on. So what's going on? We're not supposed to look at any of the questions. So we don't have any real firm guidance on like, what are we doing that they're not getting this? Because they're seeing it all the time. I mean, I've just done a bunch of observations and several of them, I've been on place value and I'm like, why are we not getting this? So we feel like there's something with some of the questioning. Dr. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that's, it makes it interesting, and I just took some notes, and it says teaching to the test, you know, and I think that's an interesting thing, because when I take the test, it tells me I'm not supposed to, with my kids, I can't walk around and look, right? We give our kids a sheet of paper that has all the reference stuff they can have. So for instance, in conversions, metric conversions. And so I gave that test, well, a lot of them said when they got done, they're like, hey, the conversion factor I needed wasn't on here. And they would say, so I'm doing this, right? And so I didn't teach my kids to memorize like 2.54 centimeters in an inch, right? Because I figured if I give them a sheet with conversion factors on there, that the conversion factor is there, right? So they know how to convert if I know the factor. So nowhere in Montana standards, because I teach by standards, does it say you have to memorize, right? But if they don't have them, they're gonna get it wrong. But you talk about teaching to the test, if I have no way to tell what the test is asking, I don't know, I have no way right now to know that I have. So,
Or which
conversions yet, you know, because the standard doesn't tell me which conversions do you need to memorize and which do you not. In fact, it doesn't say anything about memorizing. It just says you know how to convert, right? My kids know how to convert if you give them the conversion factor. And so that was a part that I was like, hey man, I'm sorry, you know, like, but they were pretty frustrated because they're like, we spent all this time to do conversions and we felt like we were good, but then none of them were on the sheet. And I'm like, you know, so, you know, when we talk about teaching the test, that would be a good thing as me a teacher to know, right? And you can say that's teaching to the test, but if I don't know it, I'm not gonna, as an adult, I don't know all those conversion factors, right? Like, I don't learn those because I can look it up if I know how to do it, right? So there's some struggles like that are hard to address, I think.
And one way we're trying to address this is what Amy has done is created a document for all of us. And we kind of put all of those woes into the document. And then we present them to, like, Amy and I've gone to a couple of, a lot more last year, but a lot with the training of mass testing. And we said, here's what we're hearing, like, and here's what we're experiencing. One of the big things last year was just, they told us each test that was gonna take 10 to 15 minutes. Well, we, along with the entire state, found that that was way under, but I was saying it's 3 or 4 times that amount of time, and we weren't all alone in that. So this year they have adjusted things, we have some changes. Maybe we're not to a great place yet, I don't think, but like we've seen a decrease in the number of questions on each test lit. So there could have been 18 last year, now you might see 10 to 12 instead. So we are seeing those. I think they're listening, but we're just trying to figure out how it works, but we are providing them as much feedback too. We talk about it in our SSD, we talk about everything, just to get as much information as we can and how it's really affecting our students too.
And with math being so new right now, like with SBAC, we had practice tests that they could do. With math, there is no really big practice test that they can do, so they don't get to see a prep where they did an SBAC, it's such a new test. So there's not enough questions right now to make it so they can have some practice examples prior to doing the test.
OPI, the state of Montana is working on that as it builds, and hopefully that will get there someday. But with that, they could go on and get practice questions similar to what they might be getting tested on, or we do not have yet.
And how are we communicating with our masked moles? What are we doing, other than just compiling it, how are we?
For like my feedback. So I have webinars with OPI. Last year when they were building it, they were almost weekly. And so I would give them feedback, what the questions I had, what they were doing, and that's where they really listened, like, oh, well, work hearing is taking 40 minutes, not 15 like we thought. So during the windows last year, they were slowly making less and less, like there was changes with the test slips throughout the windows. After this year, they're only doing like a listening at the end of windows. So I had one last week, and where all the people from like all the STCs, system test coordinator, could come in and put in like, this was the feedback I heard, this is that, or questions about reports, and we can kind of just tell them. And I gave them some, and they were taking notes and said they would discuss it. And then as far as I know where it goes from there, I don't know. But you're on a board panel kind of with a whole bunch of other people from OPI. And sometimes the Meridian, who is the one that built the test, will be on those as well, but they were not.
Yeah, and one way, so, Amy's really good about reaching out and having those conversations too.
I have heard feedback.
Oh, my wasn't working, she was doing a call. They're best friends. So one thing that I saw in several of the meetings that we went to Flathead, and one thing that I saw that I addressed too was there were hardly any administrators there. And it's not that I think that Amy's voice isn't strong and she's not on target, because she is, like, she's been through the trenches with all this testing. But I think we just need to make our voice louder. So we have talked about that some with administration too, like, we can't just send somebody off to do that, like, we gotta make sure that this is really heard, because this does affect our students. Also adding on to what Matt was saying, we were looking this week too at 5th grade, and just in talking with Josh and teaching the 5th grade curriculum, we were on the MAST. I don't have one pulled up because I have student names on it, but I can also just take a screenshot and show you sometime what it looks like. They're doing it in bands, and it's a little confusing because we're like, whoa,